Well, Gaza's health ministry, led by Hamas, says Israeli airstrikes have killed more than 6,500 people in the Palestinian territory. The worsening humanitarian crisis is drawing condemnation from world leaders. Many of them, including some from across the Middle East, are calling for an immediate ceasefire in this war. Jon Alterman joins me now. He is a senior vice president and director of the Middle East program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Jon, thank you for joining us. The U.S. has rejected a ceasefire, saying it would only benefit Hamas. So what role do you think President Biden should have in delaying a ground invasion?
Well, it seems to me that what President Biden has done is he's had senior American soldiers who worked on counterinsurgency campaigns in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and with the counter-ISIS campaign in Iraq and Syria, and sent them to talk to Israelis about the task of counterinsurgency, about what urban warfare is like, to get them to think hard, not just about the military tasks of destroying targets, but the much harder political task of creating a governance situation in Gaza afterward that is better than Hamas. That's much harder than destroying things, is building things. And I think the president, both when he was in Israel and in conversations that senior administration officials have had since, is really about what comes after, because we had a long experience in Afghanistan, a long experience in Iraq, and what came after wasn't what Americans were hoping for.
Yeah, and it also comes down to, you would think, considering what the people there want or have some sort of say. But yeah, it's clearly a mess over there right now.
Well, and you need to create an opportunity for people to do that. You need to separate the insurgents from the population. And I think this is one of the big American messages, is 2.3 million people in Gaza can't be the enemy. Hamas can be the enemy.
Right.
But ultimately, there's a lot of people there, and you have to find a way to split them. I'm not sure that's the way the Israelis started thinking about it, but that's the way the Americans really want to think about it.
Yeah, a very difficult task, especially when you look at those images that are coming from Gaza. I want to turn to Qatar. Besides negotiating the release of hostages from Hamas, Qatar also helped in negotiations between the U.S. and the Taliban and the U.S. prisoner swap with Iran. So do you think that Qatar could be helpful in this conflict, or more helpful? And do you think they will?
Qatar has ties with the political branch of Hamas. The political branch of Hamas has ties to the military branch of Hamas, but they're actually somewhat different organizations. And how much juice the Qataris actually have is a little bit unclear. The other thing is from an Israeli perspective, the Qataris are in deep with Hamas. Qatar has deep ties and historic ties to the Muslim Brotherhood throughout the Middle East. A lot of other countries in the Middle East, and certainly their neighbors in the Gulf, think that this is a problem. So the role that Qatar has, Qatar says it's very important that we're an intermediary, but sometimes some of the partners on the outside don't really like the partners they're negotiating with. And exactly where the Qataris' loyalties are is something that people debate.
When you think about a ceasefire, because that word has come up a lot, what do you think would come out of that? Is that something that's realistic, especially when we talk about some level of peace, or trying to achieve some level of peace in that region, which hasn't had that in centuries?
Well, I mean, it's had long periods of peace and long periods of conflict, and we're certainly in a period of conflict now. There has been a nationalist battle over historic Palestine for more than 100 years, and the question is, are we any closer to resolving that or not? I think we certainly are going to have a ceasefire. I don't know how much killing and destruction there's going to be before that. I think the images, I mean, you mentioned the images of this war are going to be more graphic than images of war anybody has seen before, and they're going to be circulating more widely than we've ever seen before, and there's going to be more interest than we have ever seen before. So I'm steeling myself for, at some point in the next several weeks, I think there are going to be horrible images. Just how horrible we're going to have to see. At some point, there will be a ceasefire. At some point, I hope that the outcome is that the lives of Palestinians in Gaza get much better. And I think the likelihood is that to make that happen, Hamas needs to no longer have a stranglehold on power in the Gaza Strip.
All right, Jon Alterman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.